This question comes from HBK's Lazy Eye from Chandler, Arizona. I was curious, see what he did there? If you could go back and change the winner of any match in wrestling history, what would it be? That's a pretty wide-ranging question. So when I first got it, I thought of a whole bunch of matches when I first got this question. And look, you could open it up. He said wrestling, so technically you could open it up to other promotions. You could open it up to WCW and include Goldberg beating Kevin Nash or Kevin Nash beating Goldberg, rather, at Starrcade and not ending the undefeated streak for Goldberg when they did. But I'll keep this to WWE because most of the matches I thought of are WWE centric. There aren't really any match outcomes I could think of that I would change that jump out at me from what I would call the golden era, when I was younger. The days of Hogan and Warrior and Savage and DiBiase and Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. You could look back and say, God, this guy should have won. But nothing that really jumps out is like, this is the most egregious example of somebody going over when they shouldn't have. So from those early kind of part of the 90s, late 80s, early 90s in WWE, I don't really... look, I guess if you were a big Lex Luger fan, you could say that Luger should have won the championship and won that match decisively and not by countout at SummerSlam. But again, I'm not going to die on that hill because I don't really give a shit about Lex Luger's old matches. For me, here's some of the matches that I came up with here. And a lot of them really are from the last decade or so. But there is one WrestleMania match from earlier, from 2003. And you guys know which one I'm thinking of. Triple H and Booker T. WrestleMania 19. Just because of the way that match was built up and the racial overtones and people like you don't win championships or like dance for me or whatever, all the stuff that Triple H said in his promo, which would have paid off wonderfully if Booker T had kind of stuck his fist down his throat and beaten him for the championship at WrestleMania. And there's been a lot of stories told over the years about how that was the original plan. They were going to put the title on Booker T and Triple H had it changed. I don't know if that's true or not. I can't say for sure. But that finish was infuriating. And that would be one match outcome, if I could go back in time, that I would change. It is not the match outcome, but it is one of them. Another one is the match that Triple H had with Sting at WrestleMania 31. Triple H said, and this is what Triple H said actually just recently, he was asked about this. He did an interview, I don't remember where it was, but he did an interview and he said that they had no choice. They were basically up against the wall. They were boxed in that situation because they were going to set up a segment later on that night at WrestleMania, which they did, with Triple H coming back out, him and Stephanie in the ring with The Rock and Ronda Rousey. And the plan was to build to a singles match at WrestleMania in Dallas the following year between The Rock and Triple H. So the idea is that he had to win. Because when he comes back out later in the show, it's weird if he already had a match and he lost, and now who cares if you're going to promote him for another match, which I understand the logic, but I don't think it would have mattered. I think people would have either been excited to see Rock against Triple H or a mixed tag, or they wouldn't have. I don't think him losing to Sting, in Sting's one and only WrestleMania match, I don't think it would have made a difference. But that was how he explained it. He said, we were doing this, and so therefore I had to go over in the match with Sting. That's a match outcome that I would change. I think it sucks that in his one WrestleMania match, it was against Triple H, and he couldn't even win. Like, if it was against... There are some other people where if it was Sting against somebody else, it might have made sense for Sting to lose. Had they done Sting and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 31, Undertaker would have won that match. And if I'm booking the match, Undertaker would have won that match. Now, I would have done a double retirement match, so people know going in that this is the final match of both guys' careers. And just let them go out there and just balls out, have the best possible match at that stage that they could possibly have, smoke and mirrors, and in the end, The Undertaker wins. And then they can both kind of shake hands out of respect when it's over and get a big ovation and ride off into the sunset. That would have been a cool way, I think, to play that out. Whatever. I guess Undertaker didn't want to work with Sting. It didn't happen, and so it is what it is. But if I could change things, yes, Sting would beat Triple H. in that match. And then we had another Triple H match. I don't want to make it sound like I'm beating up on Triple H here. Believe me, there's more matches I could pick, but I'm centering on these three of his. Is the match he had with CM Punk at Night of Champions in 2011. Punk was red hot at the time. He was the hottest act in wrestling. He had just come off his WWE Championship win over John Cena in Chicago in that just great match at Money in the Bank. He beat Cena again at SummerSlam, even though later that night he lost the title to Alberto Del Rio when he cashed in Money in the Bank. So with Punk being the hottest thing in wrestling, of course, Triple H had to get involved. Not only Triple H, but Kevin Nash. They got Kevin Nash involved in this angle with CM Punk, hot as he was at the time. Kevin Nash, lucky him, got to powerbomb Punk on television 3 different times. Punk got that one great line off about, he was texting his sister or something, LOL, Kevin Nash is still alive, I didn't even know. And then Nash, of course, came back with the short order cook at a Waffle House, and they went back and forth. But Nash, physically, got his hands on Punk and powerbombed him on TV 3 different times. Punk never got his revenge because the planned match, and yes, they were going to do a pay-per-view match between CM Punk and Kevin Nash, and God only knows how that match would have turned out. Morbidly, I kind of wish we would have gotten to see it. But the planned match never happened. It got canceled. Nash was on a drug called Plavix, and WWE doctors would not clear him. So it screwed up the entire storyline, and they had to rush the planned match, which I guess eventually would have happened, maybe at Survivor Series, between Punk and Triple H. They had to rush it, and they did it earlier. They did it at Night of Champions instead. It would be like cutting the middle chapters out of a book. And so it took a ton of interference. Miz and R-Truth ran in. Kevin Nash walked in. So there was a ton of interference. It took 3 pedigrees to get the job done. But Triple H still beat CM Punk. At the peak of his popularity, this guy was the hottest thing in wrestling. And Triple H, I don't care if it took 10 pedigrees, he pinned CM Punk. And what purpose did that serve? Nothing. I think Triple H just disappeared after that. I don't even think he wrestled another match for a while. But he had to beat CM Punk. He just had to, I guess, right? He had to pin CM Punk. Absolutely maddening. And it wasn't even like a heel-face thing. They were both baby faces. Triple H was sort of positioned as the babyface authority figure going into this thing. Punk, maybe in their mind, Punk was the heel. He was acting heelish, but he wasn't, kind of treated like one. The fans treated him like he was the biggest babyface star on the roster. But he just had to get that pin on CM Punk. Absolutely ridiculous. John Cena beating Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 30. That's another one that I would change if I had the power to do so. That should have never happened. Not in that first match, anyway. But Cena had to win the feud, and so he won the first one. Bray won the second, if you could even call it a win. He won because John Cena got scared by a little child. No wonder he doesn't want any kids. And then Cena won the final match of the 3. So I guess to kind of complete the program, they felt Cena had to win the first match. Then there's the end of the streak. On that very same WrestleMania, in fact. Now, they made the most of it with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker, and we got those great fan reactions, the facial expressions. People were shocked. The most shocking match outcome in the history of WWE, of WrestleMania. And it's up there. I mean, is it the most shocking match outcome ever in the history of wrestling? I don't know all of the matches in the history of wrestling to be able to say that. I'm sure when Bruno lost the championship to, Ivan Koloff? You've heard stories about that too. You could hear a pin drop. People were so shocked. But it's way up there. It was a moment, and they made the most of it with Brock Lesnar. They just turned him into a complete monster, into a beast, but the streak never should have been broken. And there's a lot of people that agree with me. There's a lot of people that disagree with me, and they think that's stupid. If The Undertaker was going to call it quits, at some point he would have had to have lost and do the honors and put over the next person. And I say, in this situation, no. He didn't have to do that. There are just some situations where you can let sleeping dogs lie. He could have retired with the streak intact. It would have been part of the legacy of his character, and they could have pointed to it at the Hall of Fame. And it's one of those things where he never should have lost. So I would not have broken the streak, even though it did end up benefiting Brock Lesnar a lot. I would have gotten the best of both worlds. I would have had Undertaker win, and then later on I would have had Brock just snap because he lost and go on a monster ripper streak anyway. And you could have gotten to the exact same destination with Brock Lesnar killing people and becoming the heavyweight champion. So no, the streak did not have to die. And I said this earlier when I was talking about The Undertaker. It should have been over at WrestleMania 28. End of an era, 20-0. Undertaker rides off undefeated after that great final shot on stage with him, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H. That should have been it. But the match outcome out of all of them, that's a whole bunch I just listed, but the one match outcome out of all of them that I would have changed if I had the power to do so and only change one, it would have been the Nexus beating Team Cena at SummerSlam 2010. And you could look at The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar and at least point to them creating a monster out of Lesnar. There was some benefit that came out of that. You could look at Triple H beating CM Punk and say that, well, it didn't really affect Punk's popularity. It's not like he died after that. He fell back to the mid-card. I mean, the guy went on to win the world title and held it for over a year. So you can point to some of these match outcomes and how it may have hurt, or maybe it was the wrong outcome, but it didn't really adversely affect the other person too much. But absolutely nothing good came from John Cena almost single-handedly dismantling the Nexus in that match at SummerSlam, taking a DDT on the concrete floor and kicking out of it. I mean, when they shot that Nexus invasion angle, there were people comparing it to the days of the NWO. People were so excited. They had never seen this before on WWE television, or it had been so long since they had seen something even remotely close to this. So, of course, the comparisons immediately started with the NWO. Now, I don't think I would go that far, but it did remind you of that. It was honestly the closest thing to it in many years. It felt real. Cena was wrestling CM Punk. This is when Punk was under a mask. And they did fan voting that night, and they voted Punk in as Cena's opponent. That was the main event of the show, and all of a sudden these Nexus guys showed up out of the crowd, and they ganged up on Cena, and Punk was a heel. And I love what they did because even Punk went after those guys. And they beat him down too. It was like, for a moment there, babyface and heel, it didn't matter. These guys, it was like a real invasion, and Punk was trying to fight back, but he couldn't do it. He got beaten down as well. The pulling up of the mat, exposing the plywood underneath, attacking the announcers at ringside, Ryback overturning the announce desk, just pure carnage, and each member had a chance to shine in that segment. Except maybe Michael Tarver, who walked right into the path of Daniel Bryan in the middle of a kick on John Cena. I'll just chalk that up to him being a little too excited and inexperienced. But they really had something special with those guys. And with Wade Barrett as the leader, he was the mouthpiece. Yes, they were green and very inexperienced, but Barrett, even then, was a fantastic talker. He was a fantastic public speaker. He was a great person to have in that role. Now, they almost killed Ricky Steamboat for real in one of their beatdown angles, but they had something special, and they killed it. For no good reason. They were never the same after that. Even Cena himself later on admitted to Edge and Chris Jericho that he had made a terrible mistake. Jericho and Edge were dead set against that finish. They found out what Cena wanted to do with the whole sequence there at the very end, that I'm going to pin them both, and they were like, dude, that's a stupid idea. They said Cena wanted to do things a certain way, and it sucked. And then after Cena went up to them, it might have been that night when he got to the back, he went up to Jericho and Edge, who had already been eliminated in the match earlier on, and he said, I was wrong. You were right. Jericho said that Cena, he wanted to get DDT'd on the floor and then kick out and beat them both. It was Wade Barrett and Justin Gabriel were the last two in there with him. And that's exactly what he did. And they thought, Jericho and Edge did, that was just the dumbest thing. These guys are the hot act. They felt they should go over. Now, who knows where each guy would be now had they played things out. I mean, look, maybe they'd be exactly where they are. Barrett's not even in the company anymore. Ryback is gone, although they at least tried with him. Slater is still around. Otunga's not even wrestling anymore. Gabriel's gone. Tarver's gone. Darren Young is gone. I'm not even counting Daniel Bryan because he was out of the group after night 1. So I'm not even including him in that. But even if just for a few more months, because I'm sure they would have found some other way to fuck this up. Even if just for another 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is, they could have had something special with these guys. They killed off the hottest thing they had going in years way too soon. The Nexus should have gone over that night at SummerSlam.